Ladies and gentlemen, this is Dak Xavier Josiah, the host of ACMG Presents Talk Time Live, the podcast. You want to catch up with all of our podcast shows and hear from some of the hottest names in all of anime, comics, movies, and games, such as...
This is Miley Flanagan, the voice of Naruto.
This is Stephanie Shea, the voice of Sailor Moon.
This is Ruben Langdon, voice of Ken Masters and Dante from Devil May Cry.
Hey there, this is Kyle Hebert, the voice of Ryu from Street Fighter V.
This is Chris Battle, character designer of Teen Titans Go.
Here's your chance to check out all of that and more on TalkTimeLive.com. TalkTimeLive.com provides all of our ACMG content with new and previous episodes, exclusive interviews, articles, and much more. Visit TalkTimeLive.com and let us help you learn to let go, live life, and love all things ACMG.
Talk Time Live.
This episode of ACMG Presents Talk Time Live is brought to you in part by Viewfinder's Identity Search and Design. Your choice for web design, graphic design, and all multimedia development needs. Visit VFISAD.com and let us bring your vision to reality.
This is Miley Flanagan, the voice of Naruto, and you are listening to ACMG Presents Talk Time Live. Believe it!
It's time. Talk time. Let's go. Anime, comics, movies, and games that come on and let's get it. Talk time. Anime, comics, movies, and games that come on and let's get it. Talk time. Anime, comics, movies, and games that come on and let's get it. Talk time. Anime, comics, movies, and games that come on and let's get it. Talk time live. Started in the 80s with Matt Cross. Dudes in the hood might have called that soft, but I carried that cross like Jesus did. Fast forward, I teach the kids to learn how to let go, live life, and show love to all things that don't matter where y'all from. And luckily, there's a show called Talk Time. We've been waiting for this for a long time. Dax kicks the facts on all the geek news, special guests and unbiased reviews. Suburban kids, the hipster street dudes, all can learn something new. Me too. I heard words when no faith is empty. I stayed the course, so my haters tempt me. Beep the podcast, that'll make them envy. It ain't too trendy, it's ACMG. Anime, comics, movies, and games that come on and let's get it. Talk time. Anime, comics, movies, and games that come on and let's get it. Talk time. Anime, comics, movies, and games that come on and let's get it. Talk time. Anime, comics, movies, and games that come on and let's get it. Talk time live.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back and Happy New Year. This is ACMG Presents Talk Time Live, the Prime Show. I am your host, Xavier Josiah. Folks, welcome to the first Talk Time Live podcast of the new decade, of the next 10 years, if we even last this long or whatever happens regardless. But we are here to talk about all that has happened in the last decade with our Best of Decade series. Myself and the ACMG Facebook group, the members there did a vote in, and we're going to talk about the results from that. I'm going to find you to be very surprised at some of the results. Some not so surprising, but we had a league of, voters that chimed in, put their 2 cents in and voted. And we're going to talk about that. Whether I agree with some of them, whether I don't, but it's going to be all here. And this is all we're going to talk about because there's no real big news that's happened. Unless you're a wrestling fan, Wrestle Kingdom has come and gone, I believe. And speaking of wrestling, believe it or not, I love how I get to factor in the wrestling aspect because this is anime, comics, movies, and games. But if we could slide in a loophole there, here and there, we will. Our first guest of the new decade, of this new chapter of Talk Time Live of ACMG. And in fact, it will happen tomorrow. And it is with Josh Chernoff of Fight TV Socias Chernoff. Try to say that like 5 times fast. I know he did that on purpose, but if you guys remember, he was a guest on the show before. He is Bill Apter's protege, if you will, former protege, if you will. He's now on his own. He's doing his own thing. And this man has had the opportunity to not only do his own show on Fight TV, but also get a chance to actually do some really great things, including, interview some of the legendary wrestlers of our time, the top wrestlers, but then go on to be a part of AEW's first few runs of shows, doing pre-shows and pre-show interviews for the shows with like Darby Allin, with Adam Page, and the Bucks and Tony Schiavone, and I mean he's done some really, really cool interviews. And for a guy who's really kind of getting off the ground, it's really awesome. And I had a chance to meet him when AEW hit Philadelphia in person finally after we interviewed the first time. So he's coming back on the show. We're going to talk about a look back at wrestling for 2019, as well as the state of wrestling games that had occurred in 2019 and what's coming in 2020. So we are factoring in some ACMG elements into it, but for the most part, it will be a wrestling-related episode, and I'm always happy to bring that in. So wrestling fans, if you're listening, you definitely want to tune in. I'm going to be having that interview tomorrow, so it'll probably get out rather tomorrow or the next day. So we'll see. I already got the graphic promos ready and everything, so we'll have that all set. But we're here to talk about the best of the decade. I decided to do the decade and not the year because there was a lot of great fandom going on in the years, especially when it comes to like movies, or especially when it comes to Marvel fans. We got a lot of that. And so, but not only that, from video games, comic books, which kind of, in a sense, comic book movies has grown exponentially in fandom, from not only just comic book fame, but from crossover fame. It hit the mainstream in a major way thanks to the contributions of A-list actors and Oscar-winning actors and such, and great directors and production and the quality that Disney put in. But what it has done is that it kind of took down the fandom of the actual comic book which it was based on. I don't believe, especially from our ACMG Facebook group aspect, there's not as much comic book fandom as it used to be like a few years back. And I think that's also one of the reasons why I stopped doing the Omega Fist tournament, because it just wasn't there. Well, that plus other things that were going on in the background of that. But I'm seeing a decline. I'm seeing more postings of anime, even on Instagram too. More postings of anime, more postings of movies, more postings of everything, but not too much of comic books. And it really scares me. I don't want to see it, because it's the source of why we have these movies and everything. And there are some things that are coming back out, and judging by the actual results of that aspect, I am slightly worried about it, because out of all the categories that were voted on, that was the least. And it leads me to believe, and there's a lot of categories. Each one of the categories had about up to like 30, maybe over 30 to 70 or 80 different, things to vote on as to what you thought. So when it came down to the comic book side, there weren't that many. And that spoke to me right there. So I'm really interested in seeing, what this is going to do for the comic book industry. Because there were some really good comic books that came out this year alone, and I've actually started reading a few myself. Like House of X and Power of X were really good. I'm surprised that didn't get picked, but there's some really good ones out there right now. I'm trying to get myself immersed back into the comic world, but we haven't had that boom period that we had in the 90s with, fantastic artwork, some great stories that were out there, and people claim that the stories weren't as good. I beg to differ on that. There were some really good stories in there. I think the writing now is better. I think the writing is much better now, I will admit, in comparison, but it was not to say that it is bad. It's not to say that it's bad at all. So I would like to see a blend of all that come back. So hopefully we will. But everything else, it's there. Especially we got the categories that we have are based on some of the 5 categories that we'll be talking about here. Let's run that down. That is best anime of the decade. That is best game experience, and that means your gaming experience. Was it from PlayStation? Was it from Xbox? Was it from PC? Not Game Boy. Nintendo Switch, 3DS. anything that was within the timeline of 2010 to 2019. And I have to stress that. It had to been within that time frame, because one of the votes that actually did win was disqualified from this poll because of the date of its premiere. And I'll talk about that as well. So, game experiences, even the Google Stadia, which did get no votes. I'm just going to spoil that right now. So I don't think that system's going to last long. Yeah, we also had, I digress. We also had the best comic book TV show series. We also had the best comic book and manga series. I combined those together because they're the same. They're produced differently in a sense, but they're all, at the end of the day, manga and comic books are the same thing. It's just one's in black and white, and the other one in reverse read, and the other one is in color. So you got best movie, which you don't need a crystal ball to predict the obvious on this one. Best game. And those are the categories that we're going to be talking about here. So let's start with the best anime. And this, at first this surprised me. This category just really surprised me from a standpoint of, when I think anime this year, and what really made an impact, I thought Dragon Ball Super was definitely going to be the one that was going to win. And in fact, it was not. To its credit, it was tied. It was actually tied with One Punch Man. In that case, My Hero Academia won, which, here's the thing. I'm surprised but not surprised at this. My Hero Academia, before the announcement of a new Dragon Ball series came out, and while Naruto was ending, everybody believed that My Hero Academia was going to be the one to take the throne as the new anime in town, as the new top anime. So, seeing the votes being the majority of My Hero Academia by far, the votes was by far overwhelming for this. I'm not surprised at how this went about. So, My Hero Academia did win for best anime, and it makes sense because I don't see any. I mean, One Punch Man was great, but it's like, it's kind of a thing. It's a caricature to me of a actual anime series. It is not to be taken too seriously as to what like My Hero Academia is, or what Dragon Ball is, or what Naruto or Boruto or Hunter x Hunter is. So yeah, I see it happening. Ideku is going to be like a really big deal in the next few years. All Might alone was a big lore for people. And the premise of them being superheroes in school, learning to be better heroes, it's a really good thing, and a lot of quirky characters in there. So I'm not surprised at the results. There's nothing really controversial about that at all. I totally agree with that. I have no problems with that at all. And I was one of the people who voted for that as well. So that's that. Move on to the next category, which is best highly acclaimed movie out there of the decade. And out of 47 selections, the ACMG members voted unanimously for Avengers Infinity War. That was the actual, honest to goodness, I knew that was going to win. I was wondering if Endgame was going to win. Surprisingly, that made number 3. Number 2 was Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and respectfully so. If anything was going to possibly beat Infinity Wars, it probably would have been that, for one reason. One, that won an Oscar. 2, it was such a beautifully done film. It was such a great love letter to everything that was Spider-Man, whether it was Peter Parker himself, Miles Morales, or anything in the Spider-Verse in general. And they did it so right. They had so many different art styles to it. It was so great. The appeal, the fanfare, everything to that movie was so awesome. But if anything was going to beat that movie, it was damn sure going to be Infinity War, which was a 10-year journey that people were wondering, was this going to pay off? Was this going to meet the standards that we expect when we read the Infinity Gauntlet? Man, did they supersede that. Did they supersede that entirely? And what even made it better was that this was just part 1 of the entire saga. And to top it off, it ended with the bad guy winning. You also had Josh Brolin, who was phenomenal. I mean, he's going to go down as probably one of the greatest villains of all time, bar none. Especially when it comes to comic book supervillains and movies, definitely. But just not even just that, greatest villain of all time, because his portrayal. There were times where people thought that Thanos was a bit of a crybaby. He was, some say, a pussy to some extent. I would say he was not. I always had a Megatron vibe when I used to read him in the comic books. I never thought of him as that. But then again, if you guys have Disney Plus and you watch the Silver Surfer animated series that came out in the 90s, I never really watched that series. I've been watching it recently for some of these episodes I watched for the first time, much like I did with X-Men for the first time, which I think I'm going to start reviewing some of these old cartoons from these Saturday morning cartoons from the 90s that was done by Marvel. And I got a chance to see Thanos for the first time in the anime series before they did, the recent Avengers shows. Why they make him sound like such a wuss? Oh my God, he sounds so Shakespearean in there. So I get now why people thought he came off like a wuss. I get it now. I totally get it now. But thank goodness they revamped him. They kind of rebooted him in a sense and gave him a more, epic type of, persona. His character development was totally revamped. And Josh Brolin was perfect for it. And they just made him a badass from this point on. So thank goodness for that. But his portrayal on there was just so great. They made him the biggest villain ever, and the most challenging thing that Avengers has ever faced. Even without the gauntlet, even before the gauntlet, how he beat up the Hulk. That spoke so many volumes of how big of a badass he was going to be and how much of a threat he was going to be in this movie. And by the end of the movie, and while we enjoyed seeing everybody in the movie, when everybody faded out, when he snapped those fingers, and by the end, it left with such a deafening calm in the theater that when people left out of the theater, at least especially my theater, actually not just my theater, because I watched this twice. I watched this twice in the theater, in two different theaters. And each time, people left out like it was a funeral. And it was so different from all the other times when we watched a Marvel movie. People left out with such happiness, with such vigor, with such excitement, like you just went through a roller coaster ride. This time around, the whole mood was changed, and you came out of there feeling like, no, it cannot end like this. It cannot end like this. You felt like you witnessed a massacre, and you came out of there feeling like that, and that's the way they wanted you to feel. But you still came out of there feeling like you watched a hell of a show. Like, it was like you felt sad, but you didn't feel unsatisfied. And that's what I loved about how they led you, how they led you into the movie, how they led you out of the theater. It's just such an awesome thing. So, absolutely deservingly so. That got it. Also, honorable mentions, the top 5 of this, and I'm really happy about this. Like I mentioned, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was number 2. Well, yeah, number 2. Number 3, Avengers Endgame, respectfully. Number 4, Black Panther, respectfully. Number 5, Jordan Peele's Get Out. Absolutely. I said it many times, I am not a fan of thrillers. I'm not a fan of horror. But the way Jordan Peele draws you into these movies, even if you're not a fan, because it becomes more than just what you see it is. And that's what I think that I was so intrigued about watching his movies, both this and Us. I was so intrigued. It's very Hitchcockian, if that's even a term. It's, it really comes off as Alfred Hitchcock, or even The Outer Limits, or even like, it's genius, regardless, whatever you want to do, whichever term, Twilight Zone, whichever comparison you want to give to it, it's genius. This is from a guy who also is a great comedic writer and a comedic performer. Comes up with this. Jordan Peele can be the next Ron Howard in the next few years and then become the Jordan Peele, in which somebody else will be the next Jordan Peele to him. But I mentioned Ron Howard because Ron Howard was also an actor that somebody came out. Rob Reiner too. Two guys who were actors in some of the most iconic, legendary TV shows of our time, and went out to become some of the biggest and best directors of our time as well. Jordan Peele has the highest potential of becoming that in the next decade coming. So I'm really glad that was voted number 5 there out of the 38 choices that were made from there. Moving on to, let me see, we got highly acclaimed movies. This is going to be interesting. Best video game of the decade. All right. This one, out of 76 choices, the ACMG Facebook group proudly made Zelda, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, the best of the decade. And I could not agree more. I cannot absolutely agree more. We spoke about this before. It made Game of the Year when it was out. And I think it was such a revolutionary game. And the funny part is that this game was voted best of the decade strictly from our ACMG group. Strictly from a game system that is not as powerful as the PlayStation 4 or the Xbox. And this game came out, said, this is what we have, this is what we're doing. And actually, the gameplay, very similar to others, but yet made it revolutionary for its own. A non-loading world, open world that you could go around to at all time, places you could climb. It felt like, they made it feel like you were so engulfed into the world. You didn't even need virtual reality goggles. This game was so realistic in its own right without even using goggles. It was just so awesome. It was a very awesome experience. It was a religious experience, if you will. I can't find myself playing that game again on the fact that I may actually be so drilled in. And the art, but not only just the gameplay, the artwork, the art style, the challenges, the move sets, everything. It just felt like you were truly earning a great experience. And by the end of it, it paid off majorly. And then with the expansions and such, it's just such a great game. I'm so looking forward to Breath of the Wild 2. Nintendo really kicked it off. There was a reason why they waited for that game to come out when the Switch came out, and I'm glad they did. This is a clear test of, this better be worth the wait, and in fact, this was. So that got top pick for best of the decade, deservedly so. Which is funny too, because when Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild came out, there was this big debate between PlayStation owners and Nintendo owners, because while Breath of the Wild came out, you had Horizon Zero Dawn that came out as well. Horizon Zero Dawn was very similar to Breath of the Wild, but it lacked. It was in comparison, it was limited. There were some things that you couldn't do on Horizon Zero Dawn that you absolutely could do on Breath of the Wild. Simple things. Just like, the gliding aspect from place to place. You had that. You had, you were able to. What else were you able to teleport? You were able to climb walls. The weather climate. The weather climate on Breath of the Wild played a huge factor on what you wore, on how you, like, if you wore clothes and you were in a desert that were too hot, it'll drain your energy. If you wore clothes that weren't warm enough in the like wintry areas, in the snow areas, you're gonna freeze to death. You're gonna deplete your energy. So it played on some realistic factors, something that Horizon Zero Dawn did not do. And I had people that were arguing down and lying, saying that they actually played it and it didn't compare. And I knew that was bull. I knew that was entirely bull about that. And in fact, as we voted on these, these games, I believe Horizon Zero Dawn was voted very low or not at all. if I'm correct. So yeah, it was voted. Yeah, it was the votes for that game was very low. It was very low. It was don't get me wrong. It was a great game. Aloe was a great character, but when you give it the overall feel, Breath of the Wild was the overall better game. And in fact, when you come to the decade, there were games that were actually better than that. In fact, if you go down to our top 5 of this category, The Witcher 3 was number 2 for voters. God of War was number 3. And Marvel Spider-Man was number 4, thank goodness. Because that was one of my all-time favorites. Mortal Kombat X. Mortal Kombat X was number 5. That's an interesting one. And you know what? That might be my fault because I didn't put Mortal Kombat 9 on there quick enough for people to vote, possibly. But I almost think, me personally, Mortal Kombat 9 was the better one because they actually rebooted the entire. Like if you've been playing Mortal Kombat from the very first one to Annihilation or Armageddon, was it? It was Armageddon, if I'm correct. Annihilation was, I think, the actual movie, but I think Armageddon was the last one before they did the reboot. But they rebooted the entire series in a Days of Future Past type of way, and it was one of the best reboots of anything I've ever seen. What Ed Boon did to his own creation, it was such a great rewrite, and it in fact made it even better. So to me, Mortal Kombat 9 should have been, in my case, that's my vote for the better Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat 10 was good, but the whole Cage thing was, but honestly, if I had to pick between the 3 new Mortal Kombats that came out, I think Mortal Kombat 9 will be my first. Mortal Kombat 11 will be my second, and Mortal Kombat 10 will be my third from there. But that's what they pick, and I respect it wholeheartedly. It was still a great game, regardless. Funny thing, I'm playing The Witcher 3 now. After all the votes that we got from the ACMG Facebook group and the members there voted Witcher 3 as number 2. So I've always heard everything about it. It was the game of the year at one point. And I decided to check it out on the Switch, which, by the way, it looks and plays phenomenal on the Switch. This is one of the games that is like, yeah, if you played The Witcher 3, or even if you haven't played The Witcher 3 like I haven't, and you own a Nintendo Switch, this is a great on-the-go game that you could take on the road and play for hours on end. And there's so much content in there. It is so far I am really enjoying it. I am really impressed with how the with the Nintendo Switch has been able to carry with this. And I tell you what, I really, really, really enjoy this game. However, when I played Spider-Man on a PS4 and I played God of War on a PS4, which have some similarities, I feel like, I kind of feel like I want to put Spider-Man out there because I'm kind of biased. I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, so I'm kind of want to be biased on this. But I'll put God of War. Even though this is not my favorite God of War game, out of all the God of War games that I played, it's still a phenomenal game. All of these games deserve, Game of the Year nods. But God of War, to me, poses as a more epic experience. Now, people will try to say, yeah, but the game experience is longer. There's a lot, more you could do in the game. I will argue that by saying quality versus quantity. Even though Spider-Man and God of War and games like that are, not as long. Even with the expansion packs, they don't provide that much, length of gameplay. The impact that it has, the quality that it has, the storytelling, all of that. It's especially God of War. God of War epic. It has a range of being like from epic to really epic, but then it changes up on different things that you do in the game, and that's always so great. The art direction is phenomenal. The voice acting is phenomenal. Actually, the voice acting is phenomenal on both ends. But the graphics is just great. The quality of the game is great. What you could do in the game is so epic. The way that the game, I think the move set of God of War is way more diverse than Witcher so far. Now, granted, again, I'm still just getting into the swing of things, and things are starting to pick up. But I feel right now so far that Witcher 3 is very slow paced in comparison to the others that I mentioned. Even Breath of the Wild, when you throw that in, it's the pacing of it is very slow. The leveling, RPG elements and leveling is very slow. So, but it's not to say that I'm not enjoying it. I just feel like I enjoyed those games better. But again, shout out to our ACMG members. They made their choice, and they made some great choices. I don't disagree with any of the votes in this at all. But that's the top 5 of that venture. So I am overall, at the end of the day, I am very glad that Breath of the Wild made it, because it was very deserving of it. What they did, and it is funny because I play Zelda games, but I'm not I say this, but I have so much Zelda crap in there, and I try to say I'm not a Zelda fan, but I find myself being a Zelda fan. I have Zelda items here. I have the orb in my office here. I have a bag from the Nintendo New York store of Zelda. So I don't know why I'm not admitting that I'm a true blue Zelda fan, but I haven't beaten or bought every Zelda game to say that I'm a Zelda fan. Like, I'm a true blue Zelda fan. I'm a fan, but I guess I'm not a super fan, if you will. I never understand. I'm more of a Street Fighter fan than I am a Zelda fan. Like, no doubt. I'm a Dragon Ball fan than I'm more of a Zelda fan. Like, I'm more a fan, but I keep finding myself playing these damn games every single time. So that's just the gist of it right there. So, kudos to Nintendo and the whole entire cast. Yeah, they did a great job as always, and that game really helped bring some eyes and ears and some money to Nintendo for the Switch. It really really stepped up the game. no pun intended on that one. So, next category we have here is going to be best comic book manga series of the decade. Now, if you guys remember, I was just talking about this had the least votes out of 56 selections out here. I am surprised. I think there are more. What I'm reading here is that there are more manga readers than there are actual comic book readers, which is still good at the end of the day. But what does that say for the U.S. brands out there? But once again, out of 56 selections, My Hero Academia was also voted best manga of the decade. I'm not arguing that either, because I was one of the people who was reading My Hero Academia before the actual animated series came out, and I was tooting the horn of that as well, saying like, this is going to be a big deal, and obviously it is, because our votes speak for itself. So that became one. Also, number 2, Dragon Ball Super. Number 3, Boruto, Naruto Next Generation was also that. Attack on Titans number 4, and Monstrous by Image. Monstrous was the only American comic book that was voted within the top 5. I mean, we got them down like House of X, Power of X, Saga, which everybody always talks about, The Wicked and Divine. I mean, we got it. We mixed both Batman, Superman, all that. Daybreaker, Day Tripper, FF by Marvel, Hawk. I mean, we laid it down. But most of the votes were from manga. What does that tell you? And like I said, the votes weren't that many in this category either. So that kind of says a lot there for that. I don't know. I'm hoping for a turn to come in 2020 in hopes that we get a revamp of comic book readers. And actually, not just comic book readers, folks. I hope that we get a resurgence of people reading, because that's the thing that is lacking. We don't read, and I'm including myself, even though I read a lot, but I like to involve myself as a whole. Overall, we don't read enough. This is a very short. With this past decade has showed us is that we become such a short attention span society. And when you have a short attention span, you cannot say that you are a scholar. You cannot say that you are, intelligent, that you are even educated. I highly argue that, because people tend to go on social media and claim that they They look and they read headlines of articles, but don't read the articles and automatically make judgments based on it. And some of the arguments is that the issues in the articles may not be, legit. Sometimes they don't provide all the details, but you won't know that until you read the damn article, or you read thoroughly, or you research. And there's been a lot less of that. And when I see the results of this category, this speaks volumes to me that we need more. We need to start reading more. We need to go back into reading more. We fell into the Twitter, deal, which was at, before the decade started, it was 120, and people were only reading in 120. And this is where that short attention span era started kicking in because of social media, and everybody wanted to just, category, just sum up everything in 120 characters, and you really can't. Then it became 240. And now it's weird because now people don't want to read in paragraphs. They don't want to read intelligently, but they want to be recognized as intelligent. So hopefully from 2020 and from 2030, hopefully we'll get back to that, reading thoroughly and be a little bit more intricate and to pay more attention to detail in reading. And hopefully that also means that comic books will become a resurgence again. And I don't want to say that means that comic book movies decline, but I want to see that we do both. We enjoy what we see on the films, but we also read what is in. And we got people who are trying to defend it, but it's like a minority of people. It's not enough. One person. And sometimes one person can't make a difference. It will require a bunch of people. So when you're quoting online, when you're going online and commenting saying that, well, I read it, and you're saying it in the emphasis that like meaning you're the totality of all. No, that's not the case. Unfortunately, it's not the case. If that was the case, then lives would be better, I guess, in a sense. But no, you're just, at the end of the day, reality is you're one fragment. A speck of a fragment towards millions of people out there who may not be doing it. You're a minority of people who are not doing a certain thing. And reading is a very important thing that we should do. It's just not. We rely too much. I really hope that changes. And at the same time, I hope Marvel starts making better comic books, because that was one of the things I think helped decline it as well, is that there were some storylines. I remember when we first started doing Talk Time Live, and we did the Digital Long Box podcast with myself and former co-host Lou Johnson, and we were reading books that were declining. That were absolutely declining, and its own thing. I mean, the writing was declining. They were going in directions that didn't feel right. And not only that, they kept doing epic sagas every summer. And I'm like, you don't have to do blockbuster sagas every single summer. It does not have to be. So, but DC's writing and DC's books I thought was better, even though I'm not really a big DC fan like that. They did have some better books, better writing. The artist over there was a little bit better too. So I am hoping to see some of that, come about in 2020. See what happens from there. So, but that's all of the category. Manga seems to run wild in the ACMG Facebook group here. The next category is Best Comic Book TV Series. Now, this is very interesting. This is where the controversy came about, because there were 35 selections here. In the last decade, we had some really, really good comic book TV shows. Not just comic book movies, but thanks to the CW, thanks to Greg Berlanti, we had some really great shows. The Flash, Arrow started off really. We had Arrow start off everything. Then we had The Flash. Then we had Legends of Tomorrow, and now we spawning out Batgirl and Stargirl's coming, and it's all culminating to what we saw from the Crisis on Infinite Earths, which has been phenomenal so far, in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinion. A lot of us at the ACMG Facebook group really dug it, but at the end of the day, there were some other really great shows outside of the DC universe. Marvel did some for Netflix. We had recently that just snuck up on us. We had the Umbrella Academy. We had that was from Netflix when they ended the relationship with Marvel. And that held up to be pretty damn good. We also had Daybreaker, which got canceled really quick. We also had The Boys from Amazon. So there were other shows that were coming out. We had The Walking Dead from AMC. We had Preacher. There was a big market for, really great quality comic book based TV shows. And we had some big ones. But here's the thing. At the end of the day, there were 5, and at the top of that, there was one choice that won all of this. And the original winner of this was the Boondocks. Now, here's the bad part about it. The Boondocks actually got disqualified. And I didn't realize this, but the Boondocks, unfortunately, where is it? Where do I have it here? Yeah, the Boondocks premiered in 2010. So it actually did not. Let me see. No. Actually, I'm sorry. It premiered in 2005. So the rules of the vote was that it had to be within 2010 and 2019. Now, if you really think it premiered, it had its premiere because it went on hiatus for a while due to some studio issues with Aaron McGruder and the rest of the studios not giving him the rights to do stuff or whatever. I forgot the controversy of that, but it did premiere in 2005. It came back in 2010 and again in 2014, but it was also the seasons that people hated the most. So because of that, it got disqualified. And in fact, the new winner of that category was in fact Daredevil. And again, I have no problem with that because Daredevil really, Daredevil was so awesome. Not only that, all 3 seasons that it lasted had a really strong beginning. The second season was great because it added the Punisher to it. And not only that, with that season, it also brought in a little bit of fanfare for hardcore comic book fans, in which for the very first time ever, and there's been times Kingpin has been seen in the Ben Affleck version of Daredevil. He's been seen in other forms, but we never got to see, and we've seen Punisher in different formats too. We've seen Punisher with his own movies, 3 movies to be exact, that he was in. And lo and behold, for the first time ever, the Kingpin got into a confrontation and finally met up with the Punisher. It was one of the most memorable moments of the entire second season. Because if you're a comic book fan of Marvel, you know that the reason for the Punisher is Kingpin. He is his mortal enemy as much as it is for Matt Murdock. So that was a huge, and I mean huge moment in that series. And the hype was met with that one. Not only that, I forgot, let me go back to find out the actor's name, because he to me deserves a lot of credit. It's Vincent, I forgot his name. Give me a sec. Scroll up here, because I know I wrote it down on the Kingpin. Yes, here it is. Vincent D'Onofrio. And the guy who played Wilson Fisk, aka Kingpin. To me, he is in fact the second, next to Thanos. And that's saying a lot. Next to Thanos, he is the second best villain in the Marvel Universe. And you can't really say Loki anymore, because lo and behold, Loki became more of a, he ended up being a hero at the end. Wilson Fisk was a villain through and through, and is still alive compared to all these guys. So Wilson Fisk is by far my second favorite villain next to Thanos, man. It would not have been, I don't think it would have been just as good had he not been able to portray Wilson Fisk the way he did. He nailed it. nailed it. I mean, he was the most feared dude. He was so feared that people were committing suicide so they wouldn't get killed by him, so their families wouldn't get affected. That's deep. That is hugely deep, man. So yeah, the show really met up. Electro was a good one too, and then they also had the crossovers with Jessica Jones and Luke Cage and everything, and to me it really met up to hype. And all the side characters too, Foggy. You had everybody from there. It was really well done. The series really met, and all 3 seasons were great. Even though they knew that they were canceling out, the 3rd season ended with a payoff. It didn't end with a cliffhanger like they did with the Runaways. For some reason, I still don't understand why they did that, because it's not coming back. But they could have ended it off the way they did and not did that one little thing at the end. But at least, to that credit, Daredevil met off with a payoff, and so it ended with a start, a middle, and a finish. So I am happy about that. So with Boondocks being taken off, there is a new top 5. And all right, so Daredevil is the winner of this, but honorable mentions goes to Young Justice, the return of Young Justice. Absolutely so. They came back and made a huge deal, and they picked up where they left off, and actually even better. After these last couple seasons, I can honestly say, and I've been debating this for so long, that Justice League Unlimited was in fact the best, and probably the best animated series comic based on a comic book of all time. And shout out and rest in peace to the late great Dwayne McDuffie for all of his writing and everything. But I think the baton has been tossed and Young Justice has taken that helm. I think the new champion is Young Justice. What they've done with this series and how sophisticated this series has been, playing off of everything that Justice League Unlimited has done. Like, Justice League Unlimited was the template, and I believe, for what they were doing with Young Justice, and I feel like the hype was met immensely here. So deservingly so, that gets the number 2. Number 3, Amazon Prime original, The Boys. Wow. Talk about I did not think I was going to see what I saw or enjoy what I enjoyed. The Boys was like, it took what The Watcher has done, and just, my God, these guys are not heroes at all. These guys are anything but heroes. It was such a great dynamic storyline of this guy trying to kill all of these heroes because he impregnated his wife, and all of these really bad things that these heroes were doing behind the scenes, but they were marketed to make it seem like they were gods, that they were like the saviors of our land. No, these guys had so much dirt, whether it was drug related, whether it was murders, all this stuff. It was just crazy, insane crazy. It was kind of like Injustice. It really was like Injustice, but at least Injustice was like, no, we're bad guys. You should fear us. These guys were like, no, we're trying to be your saviors, but behind your back, no. And there was a lot of, the main superhero was like, a devout Christian, and it's insane. It was just insane. I'm so looking forward to the second season of that show, as much as I am the marvelous Miss Maisel as well. Like, Amazon Prime is finally kicking up with some really great content. I thought The Tick was not that good. I thought there were some other shows that could have made it, but they, decided not to go full gear with it and pull the trigger with it. But The Boys, whoo, that's a winner. The Marvelous Miss Maisel, that's a winner. That, to me, is a comic book show that is not really a comic book show, but she's a hero to me. But number 5, and respectfully show, is The Watchmen. It just came out, but what they did for that show was very powerful. Connecting it with the Tulsa, history, bringing back real history in this, and basing it on the Tulsa massacre and situation that a lot of people did not know about, and people thought it wasn't real. It was, and it was horrific. And the fact that they were able to bring that up, and Regina King's portrayal, in this series, and all of the actors in here was just so well done. And the cliffhanger at the end, there's a saying that they may not do a second season. I hope that is not true because of what happened at the end. I hope that is not true. I hope that they actually do, because it would be such an injustice, no pun intended, that they don't bring this back and do a second season. Regina King did phenomenal with this show. I really think, I hope they bring this back. I really do. I want to give a shout out to the Umbrella Academy either, because it was Dark Horse's new show based on their comic book. And, this was the first comic book series after, the departure of Marvel. And I felt like that with this series, and especially shout out to Mary J. Blige, her portrayal in it, it had legs to stand on. So I hope that show comes back as well for a second season. It looks like it will. There were plenty of other shows out there. I mean, now when we vote for these films, for these shows, and everything in these categories, all of these categories are great books. All of these books. It's not to say that one was not good at all, or these are everything that was listed in these categories were some of the best of the decade. It's just that at the end of the day, there was always going to be one better than the other. It's not to say that, like, The Punisher wasn't great, or Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., or Arrow, or Supergirl, or any. Those are all great. But there was just one. At the end of the day, there's always going to be one that's better than the other. And people felt that Daredevil was. It's hard to argue. It's really hard to argue. It kind of felt like Arrow, but from a rated R standpoint, they were able to do some things in Daredevil and Luke Cage and Jessica Jones that you weren't able to do on the CW. You're able to do that now on a DC universe, and Greg Berlanti is kind of doing that now with like Titans and all this stuff. But when you compare what they did with the Defenders, and I'm saying the Defenders as in all of these separate shows to combine, and how they did the narratives and the dialogue and the story to that in comparison to what Titans is great, but what they did with it's something about it. It was just so much. There was so much more appeal and intrigue to what because it felt like you can compare that to any. It was more than just a comic book series and a TV show. It was much more. It really carried on some realistic aspects to it that I felt that was really good. But when you watch Titans, it feels like so much like a comic book series come to life, but it still feels a little more like comic book than it is realistic. So, but it's not. But I love that series as well. So, but Daredevil absolutely deserves it. Absolutely deserves it. So, I believe the final category we have here, and this should be a short one, Best Video Game Experience. That, my friends, do you need a crystal ball to predict the obvious here? Let me drink some tea real quick while I do this. Yeah. Honestly, anybody who didn't think that PlayStation 4 was going to get this nod is really telling themselves. They're really like delusional. PlayStation 4 overwhelmingly won this category for Best Video Game Experience of the decade, deservingly so. Every year at E3, it wins Best of E3. Every year, most of the games are Game of the Year coming from the PlayStation. They got more Game of the Year games than any of the games that come out. And even though Nintendo Switch, a lot of people are saying, there were people in our group that saying Nintendo Switch should have won. I disagree with that. Even though I love the Nintendo Switch and I am playing it way more than I am the PlayStation 4. The Nintendo Switch has not dominated for a decade. PlayStation has deservedly, Sony has killed the video game industry with the PlayStation 4. They have, outdid themselves. Nintendo Switch only came out like a few years ago. Like, I think they're going into the maybe third year now. That's not enough. As well as, granted, the games that you can vote for the games, they're third-party, they're AAA games that they came out with to be able to do that. But you can't really say that Nintendo Switch deserves as the best of the decade because they got a long way to go before they can really say that. But deservedly so. There was a three-way tie here because there was only, in this category, there was only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I didn't add mobile because I don't think mobile gaming is. I think the integrity of mobile gaming doesn't add on. I don't think it would have got voted anyway, so I never really added it. But here's the categories I added: PlayStation 4, Xbox, Nintendo Switch, PC, Nintendo 3DS because that was within a decade, Steam, Google Stadia, PSP also. I mean, PS Vita can also technically be added on, but no, it wasn't because it's not a decade. But all of those were mentioned. Nintendo, like I said, PlayStation 4 overwhelmingly. I mean, overwhelmingly did. Xbox, Nintendo, PC got equal votes for that, and that's saying a lot. And that goes to show people who are PC owners, those master race people, those sexless geeks, who always cry and scream on social media talking about it's the best, it has 1080p, 4K, whatever. Shut the hell up. Yeah, who the hell is at the end of the day? I don't disagree. It is a very powerful experience, but it's not the overall. I know there are some retro games that have better overall experience and gameplay than an actual 3D, rendered game on a PC with 1080p or 4P. It's just one person. It's a minority of people who decided they want to have a really great hardcore game experience. So, and to them, the hardcore game experience is graphics, not gameplay. Graphics, not quality of the game overall. Graphics. It's the only focus is on graphics. PlayStation 4 and Xbox has 4K as well. But the frame rate is really well done on a PC, and that's pretty much it. But that cannot be the only thing that makes a game great. That cannot. It's a two-dimensional for people that play PC. For people that play on PC to be that vague and that two-dimensional, ironically, about a 3D game experience, it bothers me. But PlayStation 4 is way more accessible. They have way better AAA games that more than just one genre would like to play. They had a lot more game experience. They had a better exclusives. I mean, they had Street Fighter V, for God's sakes. And I remember the E3 when that was announced. People were like, oh, that's over. Because Street Fighter is one of the greatest fighting games of all time. At one point, it was played on everything. When it was just exclusively for PlayStation, that was the beginning of the end of Xbox's rivalry with PlayStation. And then, the following year, you get Spider-Man. I mean, damn. Right there. You get that, you get God of War, you get all this stuff. I mean, and that's not to say that Xbox didn't have any great games. They did. It just felt like it was for a niche audience. All of the games felt like it was for a niche audience and it didn't cross over. I mean, I owned an Xbox 360 while I owned a PlayStation 3 at one point. I just stopped playing the Xbox. It just didn't appeal to me after a while. I ended up just like, I had it collecting dust for quite some time. It was like, you know what? I'm just not playing this game. I'm just going to trade it off. It was just having it for the sake of having it, just for the namesake. Oh, I have a Xbox 360 and I have a PlayStation 3 and 4, and at this point, I grew out of that mindset of like that pretentious mindset of like, I don't want to be that dude anymore. I don't care. I'm gonna go for what is really good, and I'm enjoying the PlayStation 4 for the time being. And now I am enjoying the Nintendo Switch. It won't be until January 17th when like Dragon Ball Z Kakarot comes out is when I'm actually going to go back into the PlayStation. I haven't played in quite a while. I played like WWE 2K19 every once in a while, but that's pretty much it. I haven't played Spider-Man in a while. I haven't played, but even still, I could go back and play some really phenomenal, fun games in that system. I just haven't played in a while because the Nintendo Switch is taking my life at this point right now, and I feel that they're going to keep doing it in 2020. And PlayStation 5 is gearing in to come out, as the Xbox X Series is about to come out. Series X is coming out. The new gen is going to come out. How is that going to fare? We'll see. We'll see soon enough. But thank you to Sony and thank you to PlayStation for all of the years of phenomenal, fun games that you've given us over the years. I absolutely love it. And shout out to all the other ones too. Take note, I said I put Google Stadia in there. I think just for shits and giggles, because I knew that it wasn't going to make it. But I really feel like this year, that gives what I call the Zune Award. If you guys remember the Zune was the device that was competing with the Apple iPod, and it failed miserably. And it's just like every once in a while we get these devices that tries to compare with other devices. We got the Google Glass that also got the Zune Award. I think the Google Stadia is going to get the Zune Award again. If anybody truly understands what they're doing with that, they're trying to take all your money. And they're trying to make all of your games online reliant. No offline gaming at all. That's the dumbest, stupidest thing I've ever said. Their whole business plan of that game sucks. So of that system sucks. And I know there's people who got it. The people who got that game got it because it got it for trendy purposes. Clearly because they can say they can afford to get that game. I am a smart consumer. I looked at that thoroughly, and I'm like, 1, negative, online reliant. 2, they're charging you for a fee to own the Stadia with the game system and a Google, and it says console free. No, it's not. Hello, the Google Chromecast is a console, so that is absolutely incorrect. If you own a Google Chromecast, Chromecast, I hate to say that word. If you own a Google Chromecast and you need a Google Chromecast in order to play the Google Stadia, that is a game console. That is so far from a lie. 2, the other thing too, number 3, you pay a fee for this, and then you have also another fee if you buy, like, say, Ubisoft's game, streaming site, or other streaming sites, EA streaming. So amongst a part of you paying for that fee, you're paying other fees to play other games. So all that adds up in money. It's not worth it. Go out and get yourself an offline game console. Hell, I even vouch for PC in this case. Get that, because it's not worth it. It is not worth it. I don't see that being any way successful at all. Even at E3, they never showed you how the gameplay was. They never showed you what they never gave you a demonstration of how this is going to work. That to me was a red flag alone. And there were idiots that actually went and bought it the day of their announcement. It's the dumbest thing I've ever saw in my life. And I'm sorry, I gotta call whoever brought that on the day of idiots. Pretentious idiots at that. So, again, thank you to PlayStation, and thank you all for taking the time to listen to the show. Folks, that will do it for this episode, for the first Talk Time Live of the new year and the new decade as well. I hope you enjoyed this episode, folks. Again, tomorrow, our first Talk Time Live exclusive is a wrestling-related guest. Josh Chernoff of So Says Chernoff on Fight TV will be on the show to talk about the year in wrestling in 2019, as well as the future of wrestling games. Because wrestling, even though this year, 2019, was a really big year for wrestling, it was a turning point for wrestling, but it also affected the gaming industry for wrestling as well. And there's going to be a lot to be talked about this year in 2020. If you've been listening to the show, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So I'll have Josh to talk about the year in wrestling. So if you're a wrestling fan, this is for you. Stay tuned for that tomorrow. It'll be out tomorrow or on Tuesday, depending on the situation tomorrow. So we will definitely be talking. He is a Pennsylvania native as well, so I'm looking forward to talking to him. I had a great, time talking to him the first time. Great meeting him at AEW Dynamite. So I'm excited. I'm very excited to talk about him and look back at what we talked about before and what's happened since. So hopefully, honestly, I'm hoping to do one every year. So hopefully we can make that happen, for all you wrestling fans and for my own, pleasure too. And maybe we'll talk some Wrestle Kingdom if he actually saw that too. So after I put this together, I got to watch the other Wrestle Kingdom too. So no spoilers, damn it. So thank you guys so much. Also, big announcement, huge announcement. I forgot to mention here. Well, I was going to mention it now anyway. As always, you can always listen to this show on TalkTimeLive.com. You can always listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, on Stitcher, on Podbean, and sometimes on YouTube as well. And now, you can finally, after all this time, you can now listen to this show on Spotify. We are officially at the home of Spotify. Thank you to all the people at Spotify for welcoming us in. And we are now here. So if you have Spotify, you can listen to us in here. Not only that, you can also listen to us on Apple. If you own an Echo, Show 5 or one of the other Echo screens from Amazon, you can also listen to this podcast on there as well. But we're recently adding Spotify. We finally added Spotify in. So we're officially, and I said I was going to do it. It's finally here. It's the first thing I got to do for the new year. So Happy New Year, folks. We are on all major platforms now. And if you saw us on Instagram, where I've been promoting it, you can follow us here as well. And if you're a new listener from Spotify and land, welcome. Thank you for listening. Hopefully you will continue to listen to this show, and we will have more. If you have not listened to the show before and also want to hear all of the exclusive interviews with everybody that has been mentioned on this show from our promos or what, go to talktimelive.com/exclusives, and you can follow all of the interviews that we have, from Mega Ran to Kyle Hebert, Gohan from Dragon Ball Super, Ryu from Street Fighter, Ruben Langdon, who is Ken Masters from Street Fighter, who is Dante from Devil May Cry, and more. TC Carson, the original Kratos, Molly Flanagan, my good friend, Naruto, and much more, and many more to come as well. Listen to all those guys as well. Folks, we're going to have a crazy 2020. There's a lot that's going to be happening. I'll assure you it's going to be happening. As long as I'm breathing, it's going to happen. Again, thank you to all who listened to the show, who supported the show, and look forward to seeing what's going to happen in 2020 as well. The sun just blazed out in my office here, so that's a good sign right there. So, folks, thank you, and continue to listen as well. Folks, that will do it. On behalf of myself, this is Dak Xavier Josiah saying, learn to let go, live life, and love all things anime, comics, movies, and games. This is ACMG Presents Talk Time Live. I am out of here. Take care and have a great week, and stay tuned for our first exclusive of the year. Take care. Music for this episode is provided by Game Chops. Check out these great chiptune tracks and more at music.gamechops.com.